along with data, to me, data is not good enough. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you today is while I can turn my social media profile black and hashtag Black Lives Matter, there's something in me that says that's not all that needs to happen in times like this. And so what are action steps that you would recommend to the white community in particular that says, well, what can we do now to begin the healing process, begin the process of building that one America that you just so eloquently talked about? What does that look like from the white side of things to start building towards that again?
I think, reach out to your fellow African-American friends. And if you don't have any African-American friends, maybe try to meet some people, go to coffee, invite somebody at your job, at your church, and just say, hey, might sit down with you in this talk. Just like, you and I are talking, having this dialogue and communication breaks down barriers. Right now, there's so many stereotypes that we have for one another and people that see stuff on TV. And a lot of times the media, their job is to blow it up, make it sensationalized. But a lot of times, like the protesting, most of the protests out here are peaceful. But the ones that you're seeing are the ones who are banging up things. And so it makes it all look bad. So the people who are protesting peacefully, they get caught up in these people who are banging, glasses out and stealing and robbing. And it's like, majority of these people are peaceful protesters. So I guess I would say is this, let's all just have lunch, have coffee, just have a phone conversation and just begin the dialogue. Once you have the dialogue going, barriers and stereotypes break down, and we will realize that we have a lot more similarities than we do differences.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should ask about that because I know, I live up here in Cave Creek, Arizona, which is, in a already predominantly white state, pretty predominantly white. And there, it's amazing how quickly those barriers pop up when there's any sort of perceived threat or reason to be afraid. Suddenly it immediately reverts to an us and them, tribal mentality, for lack of a better word to call it. It's just, we're going to lock down, and anything that we see that doesn't look like us is going to be treated with extreme hostility and prejudice. And in my mind, the looting stuff, even the word looting, I was talking with my wife the other day, no one calls it looting unless there's a race element involved. It seems it's just theft when white people do it. It's somehow it's looting and it's rioting. It immediately gets different language even. And I've been, as a connoisseur of words and, in the law, of course, we make our living by these words. To me, those are important distinctions to start pushing back on, and not just labeling willy-nilly just because it also happens to involve a major civil rights issue.
No, you're exactly right. And that's the thing. That's where the stereotypes come from. That's where, getting programmed when you see like African Americans looting, rioting, right? So yeah, no, you're totally right. So the word choices of people, what people say, one thing African Americans really hate is the word like, you're very articulate, oh, you're very smart for who you are. And I think white people are trying to say, okay, you are, a smart person. We understand that. But sometimes it's like, well, like,
it comes off as you're pretty smart for a black guy.
You're pretty smart for a black guy.
That's what it's. Yeah, and I hear that too. It's either a positive description and with finished off with, and he's black, or something like that. But I know what you're talking about, and it's that use of. It's a use of qualifiers and other things that are, and I'm not even sure exactly what to label that attitude, right? And I realize we're both trying to sort of stay away from generic labels, but these are systemic issues. I almost feel like they have to have a label if we're going to be able to call them out when we see them and say, what is that? Is that just ignorant racism? Is that what that is? Is that somebody who just it's well, maybe not ignorant, maybe just thoughtless racism, where it's just comes out and the only thing you've picked up on is, there's a different skin color there. You've complimented everything else, and then you've just decided to go ahead and throw in that gratuitous skin color reference for some reason. Hey, I noticed. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah, exactly. And I think most people are trying not to be racist, not to be prejudiced, but we all grow up in a certain way, and we all have these stereotypes, and we sometimes accidentally, use these stereotypes subconsciously, not even knowing or trying to, hurt somebody or be, mean about it, but it just happens. So I think, just communication, talking to, fellow people outside your race, I think that's going to help break down these stereotypes. And I love right now that people are paying attention to racial matters and racial issues and trying to understand what's going on. And people like yourself, just by doing this, you're opening up the door. So whoever watches this, hopefully they get some insight, even maybe just by having coffee or something. Hopefully they get some insight into this, and maybe they're not afraid to pick up the phone, because a lot of times people are afraid. I don't know why they're afraid, but maybe the stuff they see on TV or the images. But most, I don't care, how I look. I mean, I'm in a shirt and tie right now, in a suit, right? But then on the weekends, if I'm not in court, I'm in a t-shirt and maybe have a ball cap on backwards and stuff. I'm the same Benjamin Taylor,
Right.
So I guess people need to realize that the images you see on TV, are not really, African Americans are. There's tons of African Americans out there. We're all different, just like white people, just like any other race. But just break down the stereotype of just talking and learning about one another.
Yeah, there are people with families, people with friends, people with problems on the job, people, and that's the other. And that's the other thing, and I guess this probably goes a little bit back to white privilege, but you talked about some of the things that are still frustrating as a black man to hear, being told how articulate you are. I hear somebody say I'm articulate, and I get all warm and fuzzy inside, because that to me is a compliment. It's not a smackdown. It frankly would not have occurred to me to hear that exactly, in the same way that would obviously bother you when you hear that, because it means something else entirely when it's said to you, because of the implications of it. So I have the same thing where, there's I think a desire, especially for my more empathetic white friends, to express that empathy to the African American community going through a very difficult time. But it comes off as, oh, you've suffered. Hey, I've suffered too. Let me tell you about this. This one time I got a bad letter grade in school because my teacher didn't like me. And to me that obviously can fall really, really flat, because it doesn't compare to the person who got called the N-word 12 times at work last week. Those are the stories that I hear, and that I will never understand or be able to truly feel the depth that individual is feeling it. So how do we express that care and concern to our African American brothers and sisters without coming off as well, yes, I can identify because I experienced this one hard time in my life too, without that patronizing feel to it, I guess.
Yeah, I think just be genuine about it. I mean, just be genuine and saying, hey, as a white person, I maybe not understand exactly what you're going through, but I want to learn about what you're going through. And please open up and tell me how you're feeling, and not to judge, and just listen. I think listening is the key to anything in life. Just listen, you can learn a lot. And if a person, sometimes people might be angry, right? So if a white person goes up to African American and they just don't want to talk about it, be patient. Like I said, there's different, people and different personalities all in the African American race. Just like there's mad white people or happy white people. There's mad people who are African American. There's happy, there's just different races and different things. But don't just lump people up in one. And I think a lot of African Americans feel that a lot of times we get lumped up into one little bubble, and all African Americans are like this. And we're very diverse. We're a diverse group of people from different places, different states, different nations, and just open up the doors and just communicate. I think that's the biggest thing I would say. Lesson learned is don't be afraid. Reach out, because right now I'm loving it. I mean, people are getting texts, "Hey Benjamin, how you doing?" Getting emails, "How you doing?" How you doing? Because I mean, it is very traumatizing to watch this over and over. The African American. I think this is why people are so mad and angry, is because when will it end? When will the justice be served, and when will it end? So, but just reach out and just communicate.
Yeah. Well, I know one of the things that's triggered in this for me is the desire to make sure that my kids and your kids are not ever going to see this level of, I mean, to the extent that that's possible, that when they're adults, they're seeing an entirely different response. They're seeing an entirely different reaction. They're seeing body cams on police officers.
Mm-hmm.
They're seeing actual, just outcomes in criminal trials and sentencing, and regardless of what the issue is, that is my hope, that because of the acceleration I think that we're seeing, and that maybe that is the good word, is it's a new movement in a sense, but it also feels faster somehow, and I don't know if that's just the advent of social media and sort of the removal of the big three media's ability to just sort of cover one little thing at a time. Now, if you're interested, you can see coverage of this 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn as much as you want to, and my hope and prayer is that this ends up shifting a lot faster than it did for our parents and grandparents' generation, where it seemed to move at the speed of smell.
Exactly, and I think you're doing good service, to your community right now by doing this, and a good service like your kids. I mean, you're teaching your kids at a young age, because kids, they develop their minds, develop young. So if they say something wrong or they do something wrong, you can teach them, and that's I think the responsibility to try to stop racism. I don't know if it will ever end, of course, but I think we can maybe mitigate it and help it when parents are teaching their kids the right thing, or when you're in your own circles. If you're at home watching a football game with your fellow, white friends, and somebody says something off color or off remark, if another white person corrects that person and says, "Hey, that's not a right thing to say. Hey, dude, you should be saying that." I think if we all take the responsibility to do that, then that person will think twice about saying whatever they said, and I think that's right. And for me myself, I don't have any kids yet, but when I do have future kids, I want them to hopefully grow up in a society that these conversations won't have to happen.
Right.
Where no matter what race they're in, next to white, black, whoever, they can look at the person as a person, not just by skin tone.
Yeah, absolutely. This may be a loaded topic, and so I'll understand if you want to take a pass a little bit. But because of the law you practice, how do you feel about the local Phoenix law enforcement response so far to the protests, including some of the more violent fringe protests that have taken place?
And so I understand. So I do civil rights law too. So we sue police officers.
Sure.
And my personal belief is, officers, like I said earlier, are trying to just do a good job and go home to their families, like all of us, and we understand that. But there are some bad apples out there that spoils the whole bunch. But as far as the protests right now, I understand. I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right? I just don't want them to shoot rubber bullets or spray gas in people's faces who are peacefully protesting. Right. They're not doing anything wrong. I mean, the First Amendment, freedom of speech.
Sure.
You're allowed to, right, as long as you're not infringing on somebody's property and burning somebody's house. Me personally, if a protester were to come burn my house down, I might have to hurt them myself. So I totally understand that.
Right.
I don't care if you're black, white, whatever protester. Don't come to my house, try to burn my house down.
Right.
So I understand that part. And what happened in Scottsdale this past week, alluding, there's African American businesses that are in Scottsdale. I know people personally that have businesses in the Scottsdale Mall that were raided and stuff. So it's like one of those things. It affects everybody, when these things happen. So black people are not like, yay, go loot. We're cheering. No, we want people to act professionally too and protest professionally. But as far as the law enforcement, I think they're just doing their best. And as long as they're allowing and not breaking the law themselves as law enforcement, people that protest peacefully, I think will be fine.